Warning. Everything on this channel and video is for educational purposes only. All content is intended for people 21 years of age and older. All acts are performed by professionals and all people shown are 21 years of age and older. All acts are performed under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Do not attempt to recreate or reenact anything you see in this channel. Alright. So as some of you may know, I've been growing my own plants for a long time, but I also was in the commercial space for a while and still do some consulting to this day. And what's popular amongst the commercial space versus the home grow space definitely seems to vary. But what doesn't seem to change is the popularity amongst the consumer. So in this video, I'm going to break down the most popular genetics in 2024. So if you're new here, my name is Rob and we talk all things herb. Today in particular, we're going to be talking about the best genetics of 2024.
Allegedly.
And this isn't my list. I actually had a list I made a while back, and that breaks down what I personally think is going to be a banger for this year and for next year, but I guess my opinion doesn't matter when it comes to numbers. Leafly put out an article about the best strains in 2024, and honestly, in this case, I'm disappointed with the list, personally, but some people will disagree. Let me know below in the comment section what you think is the most popular genetic of 2024. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors who help make this channel available for free since YouTube doesn't pay us a penny. AC Infinity, one of the leaders in the game when it comes to grow equipment. Whether it be lighting, ventilation, or a whole entire grow kit, AC Infinity's got your back. Use discount code CLtv at checkout at acinfinity.com or CLTVAC10 on Amazon. And also Seedsman. If you're looking for some dank genetics, Seedsman's got your back. Use discount code CLTV at checkout to save on your order. Now, first on the list, crazy enough, is Blue Dream. Yes, Blue Dream.
So school.
I don't know how, but obviously the numbers don't lie in this case, and somehow it's still extremely popular amongst the consumer. But honestly, it's kind of cool to see some of the old school genetics back. Now, Blue Dream originally came from Santa Cruz, and I can't really nail down the exact breeder. There's a lot of speculation of this person, that person, but I'm not able to find the exact original breeder of this. But there's different variations of Blue Dream from all sorts of different breeders and even companies like Seedsman. Now, I haven't tried their Blue Dream, so I can't attest for it, but Mr. Q's look amazing if you haven't seen that on Instagram, or if you haven't seen maybe on X. I'm not sure if he's on X, but you can follow me on X, RobCLTV. Now, Blue Dream is a cross of blueberry and haze, and this is a classic genetic over the years that people have been saying is the best for pain relief and great for relaxation, but it really doesn't seem to have a major effect on me. That flavor of the blueberry-ish kind of floral, hazy funk, just not necessarily my cup of tea, but some people really love this. Now, the difficult part with getting Blue Dream is you may not know if it's the original or the actual genetics. And in this case, oftentimes they're not. They're mock-ups or they're replicas of the original. But one thing you'll notice definitely with this is, again, that blueberry kind of floral, hazy smell that'll really stand out and should pop more. The ones I've had in the past didn't really have crazy aroma, but that just has been my experience, unfortunately. Now, if you were to grab a Blue Dream, and hopefully it's one that's comparable to the original, this will grow for an average of 8 to 9 weeks in flower. It's a pretty easy grower, moderate to easy for beginners. You could definitely expect some heavier yields, which does come from the blueberry and from that haze. Collectively, they've definitely been known to be bigger producers. Now, again, this isn't across the board, but this is the experience that I've had in the past. And it's clear in today's day and age, the masses still appreciate it. Now, if Blue Dream's hard to find, here's some alternatives that are pretty similar. Next on the list is Apple Fritter. Now, this is a cross of sour apples and animal cookies, and it's definitely one that's not for everybody, but it has that sweet, earthy, funky flavor that some people really are after. Now, the medical effect on this one is more of a sedative, relaxing, kind of chill effect. That's great for a lot of people who deal with anxiety, stress disorders, things like that. Apple Fritter's been popular for a long time, and honestly, I'm not too surprised to see it make a list, but in 2024, for it to be one of the most popular purchase lists, that's kind of surprising in my opinion. But it definitely is a hit or miss when it comes to the smoke. Now, I remember Franklin Fields grew one a while back, and they were hit or miss in general with the growth because...
Forget it!
But in the past, it's come out pretty good, and I've really seen some great advancements in the growth of it when it comes to some of my local home grow buddies. Apple Fritter being a frosty bud, high THC cultivar, which again, I don't care about that. I saw a recent video going over high THC.
It's a marketing tool.
But some people really aim for that in their garden. Oftentimes you'll see this one growing 8 to 9 weeks, and it's a pretty easy grower. Now, I've never seeded the Apple Fritter outdoor. It does seem to take better to indoor growing and more of a controlled environment, so maybe keep that in mind if you try to pick this one up. Now, if Apple Fritter's hard to find, here's some genetics that are similar. Next on the list is another one that for me seems like a very generic old genetic that somehow is still having popularity, and that would be gelato. Now, this is across the Sunset Sherbet and Thin Mint cookies, and it's one that a lot of people still love. And honestly, a Gelato 41 in particular, that particular phenotype, I'm not really sure how they get the numbers that are accurate, because if I grow 100 cultivars, my 41st may be different than your 41st, but you know, It's irrelevant, I guess. That one always had that kind of desserty, piney, gassy funk mix that was very unique to the palate. And honestly, some people may not love that, but me personally, it was more up my alley. I really feel when you look at some of the genetics that are crossed with gelato, you're seeing a lot of these traits that lean more on the gelato side, and people are just wanting to get some new color, higher THC, more yield, or just a new name so they can separate themselves. Gelato's been so popular for so long that so many of these genetics are just crossed with gelato, runs, cookies, and it's gotten kind of boring in my opinion. But my opinion doesn't matter. This is what the people have selected. So yeah. Now this one oftentimes is an 8 to 9 weeker. It doesn't grow massive buds, they're decent size, but you usually do get a decent yield overall. Decent trichome production, and the terps usually are a lot more enunciated and loud compared to some of the other cultivars on this list, in my opinion, honestly. Now the gelato crosses that I've had in the past usually come with some decent foliage, so at that point you may want to do some pruning or some defold to make sure that your plant is yielding as well as it can, or if you're just grabbing it, make sure you're fighting the gelato with the nose on it, because sometimes you'll get these gelatos that just say gelato, but the flavor and the aroma just don't back what the actual cultivar is. In that case, I feel like these are just replicas or again, knockoffs, but sometimes these are just different phenotypes that the grower decided to select. Now, the gelato crosses I've had in the past have been susceptible to stress compared to other genetics, so you want to make sure that you're treating this one a little differently and being a little bit more cautious in your feeding regimen. But overall, gelato is a popular one here in the States, and I think it's going to continue to be a popular one as it's crossed in a million different other cultivars. People may eventually see that the original one is the best one to get, but just my opinion, of course. Here's some genetics that are similar to gelato. Next on the list is wedding cake.
Some things never change.
Now this is a cross of animal mints and triangle kush, and for me, when it leans more on the animal mint side, I'm not a huge fan. I've never had an animal mints that has heavy terps. People say that there is one out there, and I bet you there is, but I've never had one with any flavor. So drop below in the comment section if you have. Maybe let me know some traits to the plant itself so I can keep an eye out for that if I ever end up growing it again. So again, we're stuck in a 5 to 10 year gap of popular genetics, it seems, and I'm a little disappointed to see this one on the list. I feel like wedding cake is good, but it's kind of played out. We've had this for a long time. Now this is one that came from Sea Junkie, very popular breeder, usually coming out with some very fire cultivars. And the original wedding cake absolutely is. There's just a lot of, again, knockoffs or replicas and a lot of crosses that just were a little lackluster. They didn't hit as good. Now, wedding cake is popular with a lot of growers because it's a faster flowering genetic depending on the phenotype that you have. It's pretty resilient to pests or to environmental stress, and it yields decent. A lot of trichomes, pretty bud, and overall a good growing plant. Wedding cake is a pretty easy one to grow, and it is beginner friendly in comparison to some other genetics I've gone over in the past. But oftentimes with wedding cake, depending on the pheno that you get, it'll have a desserty, almost tangy kind of funk to it, a little different than what I've had from other cake-based cultivars, and some people really love that. Now wedding cake crosses can do it for me, but it just isn't always my go-to. When it comes to the growth of wedding cake crosses, I have seen some great production and I have seen some great growers. If you're not able to find it, here's some other genetics that are pretty similar to wedding cake. Next on the list is Super Lemon Haze. This is a cross of Lemon Skunk and Super Lemon Haze, and it's got that zesty, funky zinger kind of dank to it that I'm not always a huge fan of, but sometimes in the right, mindset, that zestiness can really hit.
You sure this isn't Diddy?
And this sounds like I'm reading something from the early 2000s or late 90s potentially. Super Lemon Haze is still popular according to the metrics, and people are still going after that consistently. This is an old school greenhouse seed code genetic, and a lot of people have known this one for years, honestly. Seeing this on the list was kind of cool, but also surprising. Now, Super Lemon Haze is always great smoke in my opinion. It's been one that I used to love back in the day. It was one of my first introductions to named genetics. It was Durban Poison, and then Super Silver Haze, and then Super Lemon Haze. This one I've seen go as far as 12 weeks for flower, and it is a decent grower, but this has the sativa structure to it, so do expect it to be more lanky, potentially further node space, something that's gonna be a heavy producer that could potentially lean towards extraction instead of flower. But the flower definitely has that strong terp as well. Now, I've grown Super Lemon Haze years ago, which is crazy to even see this on the list now as a popular one, and it's usually a very heavy yielder. I was able to get 6.5 ounces off a 3-gallon pot, and it wasn't a very large plant, but it just produced. I think this is one thing that's been able to keep this genetic around is the sharp terps, and then also the nice yield. The only downside for a lot of people is that sativa growth. It's going to be taller, lankier, harder to have canopy management, and potentially could be a longer flower. So in the commercial setting, I'm honestly surprised that this made it on the list. Now, they may not have it on the list, but a couple honorable mentions for me, at least, that I've seen were Surebanger from Boston Roots Genetics, Cadillac Rainbows. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to put it right here who it's from. And I've seen myself that these are hot sellers, and oftentimes everybody in the market has them. Whether you're a home grower or commercial grower, you find these hot genetics and sometimes you jump onto it to the point that it becomes too saturated and people get played out on it. Remember Gorilla Glue number 4?
I miss you so damn much.
And I'm surprised half of this list is what it is. I just kind of assumed Keeping Up with the Joneses would have been in our space as well. And maybe it's just the home growers. It seems like we make genetics popular as a home grower, it gets out in the market, and then the commercial space is FOMO and they want to buy it up. And they end up getting $15,000 slips, and this isn't necessarily the best choice because they're not getting the one that we've all been growing. And if they have, they've saturated the market so much that we get sick of it. Look at white truffle or gorilla butter. It's everywhere. It's still fire, but it's everywhere. And honestly, it just comes down to the point where saturation of the market is what it is. But as home growers, we have a choice to either take what's on lists and what's popular and what's hot, or seek them out and find them ourselves. And I personally believe in finding them myself, not going after the hot trend, and if anything, checking out something after it's already died down, so that way it's not an oversaturation of the knockoffs or the replicas that don't necessarily hit those terp profiles that they're advertising. Now, as we're getting to the end of the year, we're almost here to Christmas and Hanukkah, same day, which is crazy. So happy holidays to everybody. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for everything. And with that being said, stay lifted.
Are you a grower? Are you tired of lugging around too many bottles? Is it too expensive? Is it so confusing? Tired of reading feed charts? Well, guess what? There is an easier way. Introducing the Stash Blend. You can now get your bag of Stash Blend premium additives that you can add to your garden using just about any base nutrients. Go to stashblend.com and get your order today.